Hey guys, Zangetsu 134 here, bringing you another vlog. This time we're looking at Kamen Rider Zio, Episode 1, the premiere of the new king. Well, okay, that's not the name of the episode. The tagline for Kamen Rider Zio is the birth of the new king, Kamen Rider Zio. So, I to be honest, thought that perhaps Zio wasn't going to be the next or the last Hesei Rider. I think a lot of us assumed Build was, since last year it was decided that the current standing emperor of Japan, the one we have that is named Heisei, I forget his actual name. Heisei is not his name. The Heisei is simply what the title of the emperor is, and that title becomes the name of the era. His father before him was Showa, and so that was the Showa era. And it's arguable whether or not we're gonna get like an emperor title for the next era of Japan. Whether they'll do that or not, it's unknown at this point, and the emperor, and technically it usually happens when the emperor dies. The current emperor of Japan is actually 82 years old, and he's decided that I'm getting too old. I don't want, my old age to affect my decision making and such, even though technically the prime minister of Japan does most of the work, but, he still has decisions about what they should do, and he's still an important figure. In fact, I think usually when the president goes to visit the Emperor of Japan, that's where they go to Japan. They usually meet both the Prime Minister and the Emperor. He's something of sort of an ambassador, a lot like the Queen of England is how she's technically a ruler, but she's more ceremonial / she is the figurehead of England. This year technically marks the end of the Heisei era. Much like how Kamen Rider Black RX is technically the last Showa Rider. I say technically because the three movie riders, Kamen Rider Shin, Kamen Rider Jin, Kamen Rider Zeto, and I say Zeto because technically we have a Zio now, an actual Zio instead of, and technically it is pronounced Zeto, much like how Kamen Rider ZX is pronounced Zet Cross. Technically, Black was the last Showa Rider, as he started in 1989, which is the last year of the Showa era, and he went up until like the early 90s, I think. But they usually consider the three movie riders as the last Showa riders, even though technically 1990 is the beginning of the Heisei era. But they usually the rider that begins at the end of the end of the end year is considered the last of that era. So technically it's Black RX. Most people consider the Heisei era of Kamen Rider to begin with Kuga and ending now with Zio. But like I said, the three movie riders are usually lopped in with the Showa riders to make them more even. When Kamen Rider Gaim came out, he was technically the 15th Heisei rider. And so they decided to have the three movie riders be Showa riders, especially because their aesthetics clearly are more in line with the Showa era riders. A lot of them having the bug eyes that look much like Ichigo's, or just having a design similar to Black's. For instance, Jay looks a lot like Kamen Rider Black RX. Same with Zio, since they both have almost completely similar designs. It's why when Saban made Masked Rider, they used the movie footage of those two as a green form for Masked Rider, even though technically Masked Rider's regular outfit has more green, since Black RX was black with green highlights / green for the body and forelegs, and black for the lower arm, lower legs, and head. But anyway, I'm kind of dragging. The point is, Zio is technically the last Heisei Rider, and he's also technically the 20th anniversary for the Heisei Riders, as he's the 20th Heisei Rider. It's kind of weird that I've been watching since technically, at least Forzay. I did watch other seasons. I started technically with Dragon Knight, the American adaptation of Dragon Knight, which got me into Kamen Rider, and then I watched Kuga because I wanted to try and watch each series from the beginning, but at the time it was very hard to find places to watch the shows. And the first modern series that I watched while it was coming out was Forzay, who at the time was... Okay, Decade was 10. Double was 11. Oh, yeah, he was the 13th, actually. He was the 13th rider. Although, he was also a special case, as technically he was called Forze because it was the 40th anniversary of Kamen Rider. And that's by years. He's technically not the 40th Kamen Rider. There's actually only been 23 overall Kamen Riders. 2 years we'll get actually 25 riders, but and yes, I know there are more, but like in terms of named TV shows, Amazon's doesn't count. The first Next don't count. The Sidekick Riders do not count overall. They do count as Kamen Riders, but they don't count in the official numbering because they are side characters. It's like how like the Blue Centurion doesn't count as like a Sentai character, even though he technically counts as a Power Ranger over here. So yeah, this is technically the last Hesei Rider. I do feel like Build was probably going to be considered the last one, just with all the references that it subtly made, like how it had Showa undertones, how the riders kind of reference other seasons. The bringing back of Kamen Rider alumni, like Otoya Kurenai's actor, who played Grease. But in all, I'm glad that we got a 20th anniversary rider with Zio. Mostly because as much as I don't mind Decade, I know it has a lot of problems. It's technically the shortest Showa series. Still not the shortest Kamen Rider season overall. The shortest goes to Amazon at 24, I think? 24, 26 episodes? Yeah, I think it was, it was 24. 24 episodes. And technically the longest, I think, is still the original Kamen Rider at 98. That, of course, because it technically had 2 riders, as Takeshi Hongo's actor was actually injured on set during a motorcycle stunt, and he was replaced with Hayato Ichimonji's actor until he was good enough to come back. And then the last third of the show was about the two of them together as the double riders. In fact, the first 2 double riders. Whereas Amazon was only 24 episodes due to the fact that it was not popular, mainly because at the time it was really violent and gory, and eventually had to be I shouldn't say dumbed down, but toned down just for the amount of gore it had. Although if you watch it now, it looks so fake. It's unbelievable for me that it got such harshness. But yeah, Decade was only about 31 episodes, and that's because it had a lot of problems. The most being that a lot of the writer alumni did not want to come back for the show. Mainly Joe Odagiri, who played Godai Yusuke, mainly for the fact that he's never really came back at all. Part of it's because he really liked how Kamen Rider was in Kuga, and he felt that later series moved away from what Kuga was, as well as the fact that he really only wants to do something if it's with the director of that season, because he really didn't want to do Kamen Rider because I think he was afraid he would get typecasted. But due to like pressure from his agency saying that this would actually be good for him, he took the role. And like he said, and like I said, when he got on set, they assured him that it wasn't going to be like a kid's show. They wanted to show Kamen Rider as something that could be both for kids and for adults, and it would be this dark thing, and that's why he chose to go on. I know Joe Odagiri mostly now does like, which is kind of weird because he didn't want to get typecasted, but now he's in like a lot of J-dramas and stuff, so I'm like, it seems like you kind of got typecasted anyways, dude, because you're not like in like big movies or anything, at least to my knowledge. I will admit, most of my knowledge of Japanese entertainment comes from children's TV shows. Mainly anime and tokusatsu. So... What was that? Was that my computer? Oh, anyway. And so, he wouldn't come back. I think a lot of other things were like, because of the fact that like they didn't have a lot of the Hesei Riders come back, they decided to make it much shorter. Originally I think it was only going to be like 18 episodes, 2 episodes per each of the 10 Showa or Heisei era seasons. I think Shoji Yonemura, who was the director of that, he'd also done Kamen Rider Kabuto, and he was a student of Toshiki Inoue, a writer I don't really care for, and Yonemura himself I don't really care for as much as I used to. I still like Kabuto a little bit, but like I'd like it more for the designs of the monsters and the rider suits and some of the story elements. I'm not a big fan of some of the decisions that was made on Kabuto. So yeah, and then basically due to pressure from the fact that the show was not doing very well, and due to the fact that they didn't have a lot of stuff they were going to do, and I think also because partially Kamen Rider had not been doing well at the time. I think from like Hibiki and Kabuto did not do nearly. Okay, Hibiki had gotten really low ratings, which is why they had to switch out writers halfway through and went with Inoue, who didn't make it any better. Although, in my opinion, I think that was mainly because of the fact that the Hibiki writers look so unbelievably different from everything else the series had to offer, down to the fact that it just was wildly different from any other season. And then they did Kabuto, which was much more closer to a back to basic series. There wasn't nearly as many transformation trinkets. It was more about the riders fighting stuff. They clearly had a bug motif in it, which I think was something that people had a little bit of a problem, that it felt like the bug motif was getting lost, which I argue isn't true. I thought Agito and Kuga both had a beetle motif. Ryuki definitely moved away, but that was because of the fact that they wanted it to be about a dragon. In fact, I think that year it came out, it was a Chinese New Year. It was the dragon year. That's why they did that. I could be wrong. Do not quote me on that. Faiz had a lightning bug motif, which I actually really like. That season is probably one of the few Toshiki Inoue things I mostly like. I have issues with it, but they're not nearly as bad as some of his other works. Faiz did pretty well, I think. I think a lot of people regard Faiz as a high point. Blade's pretty good. I know a lot of people say the acting that's really bad, but I can't really tell. And again, like I take a lot of the acting in these shows with a grain of salt because they are written for a younger audience. So if they don't get actors that can do like Shakespeareanly well, I don't really care. And also I have no right to judge what is or is not good acting in a different country. Yeah, I'm not Deshinta. I don't do that sort of thing. Blade had definitely a beetle motif. Both him and Garen had a very big beetle motif. Him being a stag beetle, and Garen being a quagga stag beetle. Liangle being a spider, and Chalice being a mantis. And I think that season is pretty good. I especially like the ending. I think it's really well done. Hibiki, like I said, it had issues, and then it went downhill. Yonemura's Kabuto, I think, definitely got interest brought back to the table. Deno was a smash hit. Like, the train motif, the character... Like, I think Deno is definitely a high point, one of the major high points of the first round Heisei Riders. I think although I know a lot of people think it's kind of the beginning of the end for like the Neo Heisei, because of the fact that a lot of what modern Heisei series do, they do steal from Deno. I don't necessarily believe that's completely true. I just think it's very well done. I will admit there's a problem with the fact that there's so much spin-off material and different movies and shorts they made for Deno. The fact that the Imagines that, were Deno's transformation abilities, got their own cartoon show, which I watched episodes of. It was okay. I even argue it's rough to call it animation, since it was mainly just taking, like, like paper cutouts of the Imagines and having them like move like a South Park puppet show. Like if like South Park did like a puppet show, like they would just literally be on sticks and they would bounce them around, which is arguably how South Park does its animation. Then we get to Kiva, which I do like. Again, I hate saying it because Toshiki Inoue wrote it, and I love things about Kiva. The story's not very good, but I love the designs. I love the fact that they try to do a thing where like we see like the history of like these characters and like what like how the history from like the 80s up until 2008, like how it like shaped the events that are going on now. But it's arguable whether or not it was very successful at doing that. Then we get Decade, and like I said, Decade was only probably supposed to be about like not like 18 episodes. Like they did 2-parters for each rider, and I think partially they wanted to do that so that they could have like 10 riders, or that like because like they only really wanted to do like a short special since they wanted it to be mainly about the Hesei Riders. Which I will admit, like as much as I don't like Yonemura's writing, I do think he was kind of pressured into doing what he did later. Because they realized how little stuff they had to bring in the Showa riders. And then eventually they realized because of the fact that, like, when the Heisei Riders came back, they were all in their own universe. Like, the only times we ever seen them cross over was a weird dream thing that Ryuki has where the main character has a dream where he meets up with Agito, Kamen Rider Agito, in reference to the fact that he's technically based on a dragon, and they're both dragon riders. And I hate saying this is a crossover because he only between Den-O and Kiva, where Wataru, the main character, only shows up I think at like the very end. It's really more like and to be fair, it's more like it's a cameo for like how like the modern Heisei film, or like you know how like every Heisei film has like at the end of the series the next rider to come in, like how like doubles, A to Z, the guy in Memories of Fate had had O's show up to help double out fighting the moon, the Luna Dopant, or how in Kamen Rider Build Be the One, Kamen Rider Zeo shows up and helps him. So yeah. But yeah, and so Decade had problems, particularly in the fact that they had to integrate the Showa Rider stuff into it, and it didn't do it very well. And it seemed like the season did really poorly, although I think the toy sales did really well. So basically they had to do something, and that's where they went into trying to do a little bit more like Den-O, and then they got in Riku Sano to do the next season, who's a favorite of mine. I think he does really good work. I think he's one of the better writers that Toei has, even if he doesn't always do things great. Looking at you, Kyoryuger. And so we got Kamen Rider Double, which is arguably my favorite of the Neo Heisei, and I think it's like a high point for Kamen Rider in general. I think it's very well written. I think the stories are good. I like the concept. O's was pretty good in my opinion. I think it's kind of trying to be like a lighter version of Kamen Rider Kuga, so it does lose points for me, but I still enjoy it. Forza, like I said, is really good. It has a special place in my heart for being the first series I watched as it came out. I think in general it's very good. Wizard was next. Wizard's kind of mediocre. Gaim is fantastic. Second favorite Neo Heisei season. Maybe even and overall, I argue probably my third favorite because of the Heisei in general. Kuga's probably my all-time favorite. Then you have Double, and then Gaim. Drive. The first 20 episodes are kind of meh, but I think once you get past episode 20, the series really gets good. It takes a little bit to get the engines revving, as it were. Next is Ghost. Ghost is really mediocre. I don't think it's very good at all. The less said about Ghost, the better. Then we get to X8, and I think X8's really fun. It's only 45 episodes. I think it's one of the shorter seasons of the Heisei era. Not like overly short, but like most of them usually end at like 47 or 48. Build, for example, ends at 49. Wizard went to 50, which I don't know why it went to 50. Oh, okay, I do know why it went to 50, because like they were trying to milk it as much as possible, and Genurabuchi wasn't ready to start Gaim as early as I think they had wanted to start it. Then of course we get Build, and you guys watched my entire play. If you guys watched my entire playlist of Build, you know I think it's pretty good. I argue it's in my top 5. I think it's really good. So, and now of course we come to Zio. So Zio, I will admit, this first episode has problems. I don't think it's bad, and I'm not gonna rate anything about the characters because we're only an episode in. Like, I know a lot of people when they watch this, they're probably not gonna like Sogo right off the bat. I think that's intentional because they're trying to show that he may or may not become a bad guy according to the plot. And I think this series is trying more to set up the mysteries and like the basic story stuff instead of really setting up Sogo and the rest of the cast as characters, particularly because like they aren't in tune with the scans we got of magazines and stuff, particularly Tsukuyomi, but we'll get into that. Even though I'm 20 minutes in and I'm talking about the actual episode. I kind of wanted to talk about my feelings of the Hesei series in general, and I also wanted to point out why this is technically the 20th Hesei Rider. But yeah, so my really biggest problem is the show opens with us seeing Omozio, who is the Evil Overlord ruler of the year 2068, 15 years from now, or 50 years from now, because this is 2018, not yeah, I'm counting. I know. I'm terrible at math. Not like 2050. It's not 2053 is what I'm playing. Which also makes Omozio like almost 70 years old. Because our main character is 18. He was born in the year 2000. He was born the same year as Kuga. So that means he's like... he's 18, and that's 50... Like, he's legitimately almost 70 years old. It shows him in front of the statue that's going to be, I think, a recurring theme and prominent symbol throughout the season, showing a young Sogo Tokiwa, who's basically the age he is now, standing in front of this weird clock-looking thing with all the Hesei Riders in like a circle around him, with a plaque that says, dedicated to the first time, Sogo Tokiwa, or maybe it's Tokiwa, I forget how you pronounce his name, I think it's Tokiwa. Sogo Tokiwa, ever henchioned. And Omozio is standing at it, and we see that he's fighting a bunch of rebels, and he easily defeats them, which I really like how they establish how powerful he is. Like, missiles... And the giant vehicle of this season, the Time Machine, is actually a group of robot mechs that they have, and like they throw missiles at him. And he uses psychic powers to knock them around. He uses his time powers to freeze things in place. And then he ends with what I think is him sending out an energy wave that disintegrates things. Or arguably he's doing a Thanos and just unmaking everything. It could be either or. And so, the rebel forces are pretty much devastated, and in those we see Gates. His name is actually Gates. He's Commodore Gates, but at the same time, his name is what his rider, his rider form is called. And so he decides that if they can't defeat Omozio here, he will time travel back and kill Omozio before he gains the power to be as powerful as he is. However, one of the other members of the rebellion, Tsukuyomi, goes back in time instead, and she goes back in time to try and talk Sogo out of using the Ride Watch to transform into Kamen Rider Zio for the first time, so that way he will not become Kamen Rider Zio. And so we meet Sogo Tokiwa, and he's a type of Japanese stereotype character, basically that he's a lazy slacker with delusions of grandeur. That's a pretty common anime trope where like the main character is lazy or he daydreams too much. You see that a lot. I think a lot of female characters in Mahou shoujos as well, like particularly like Usagi from Sailor Moon. In this case, he's an 18-year-old third year high schooler, more or less. I think like at the end of his schooling. He's basically a senior in high school, and it's like the end of his senior year, basically. We see him talking with friends, and he talks about how like when they did the placement tests, basically like those job tests that job profile tests that you do in high school, where they see what kind of jobs you'd be good at, to kind of give you an idea of where you should, do your studying and what career path you should take. Career aptitude test, that's right. CAT, career aptitude test. And so, you find out that he wrote down that he wants to be a king. We don't exactly get why he wants to be a king until like the very end, where it's mainly that he wants to be a king because that way he can make people happy, and he can give people a kingdom where they can always be happy and always have fun and good times and have smiles. So it's very childlike and innocent, even though he's like 18, and everyone's kind of trying to steer him away from that. Like even his uncle, although his uncle tries to do so in a way where it's not like he's trying to be rude to the kid. He's like, that's nice, but maybe you should have like a little bit less lofty / an actually attainable goal. And through all this, we see that he is being pursued by a red time machine, which is which we later find is the time machine for Kamen Rider Gates. We don't know where he got the red time machine, or for that matter, where he gets his Gates ride watch or Ziku driver, as it's called. It's all just kind of handed to him. I feel like probably as the series goes on, we'll get an idea of where he got all that, because we see how Sogo gets his stuff here. And it makes more sense here, although it could arguably be that like this it's given to the same person, and we'll get into that. And so eventually Sogo comes across a blank white ride watch, which will become his first ride watch, of course, the Zeo ride watch. I've said ride watch like 3 or 4 times in the same sentence. Well, where he's met by a mysterious man in a cloak holding a book known as the Twilight to Destruct. I think it's the Twilight to Destruction Advent Calendar, or just Twilight Advent Calendar. Where he commemorates, where he basically is commemorating the moments of Kamen Rider Zeo's rise to becoming the Demon Lord, and he warns him to be careful of a red robot. And it's arguable that the watch was given to him by this mysterious character, who we later find out is named Waz. And so, he takes the watch, and then he's proceeded to be chased by Gates. And he it's kind of zany and silly. Like it gets to the point where like he manages to evade Gates by tucking into a side alley while on bike, compared to the giant space robot. Although it could be argued that Gates isn't really, like, he wants to probably play with him a little bit to see if he really is the guy he's supposed to be. And then he of course tries to grab him with the time machine through a glass window, and almost does so. But then he is beat back by another time machine. This one, of course, being the one that Zeo will use throughout the season, piloted by Tsukuyomi, who puts him on the ship and absconds with him, and takes him to the Cretaceous period, where we actually see what happened in the opening. Basically, he sees his future, and then he goes out to get some air, and then he's chased around by a dinosaur. I will admit this is my big problem with the episode, because we had to basically go forward to go backwards. We had to see why he's seeing that, and then we had to see why he's in the Cretaceous period, instead of just, in my opinion, just having the Omo Zeo stuff and the time travel stuff start there, have Gates time travel, and have Tsukuyomi go back to keep him from doing that. And then we could just play the episode out normally without doing the in medias res stuff. I'm not a big fan of in medias res unless it's it's done in a way that makes sense. And particularly, I think it really works more when you're doing a movie because it's longer instead of a TV show where basically you're going like 5 minutes into the future. And also the dinosaur effects are really bad. Like, for one, the fact that the T-Rex sounds like an elephant. Like, I don't know why you did that. You could have made him sound like anything. You could have made him sound like the Fang Memory from Double. You could have made him sound like the Metal Gabaryu. You legitimately could have made him sound like anything. And so... oh man, my voice is drying out. I think I might have to go get something to drink. And keep talking. And so... he almost gets eaten by the dinosaur, but then the time machine grabs him and they go back and they go further. They go forward in time from the Cretaceous period. Sorry, hold on a minute. They go forward in time through the Cretaceous period. From the Cretaceous period and end up, I think, in like the Edo period. Or maybe a little bit after the Edo period where like Japan is now colonized, and so we see Tsukuyomi sit down and talk with him, and as they do so, like she tells him of his future and how he's an overlord in that realm, and he's kind of overjoyed, but it's mainly for the fact that like, oh, I have lemonade. Can I pour lemonade while I'm? Yeah, I think I can pour lemonade one-handed. We'll find out. Yeah, I'm grabbing something to drink. I'm grabbing a little bit of lemonade. And so he's like more overjoyed the fact that like his dream is coming true, that he is going to become a king. And really only slightly miffed that he's an evil overlord, which makes Tsukuyomi like, no, stop it. You can't do this. You need to throw that away so that we can prevent this horrible future. But then he's interrupted by these guys that are fighting, and Tsukuyomi, I think at this point, doesn't really believe that she has the right guy, so she makes him try to break up this fight. And he has no fighting experience because he's an 18-year-old slacker. In fact, Tsukuyomi, I think, even brings up that like his grades are terrible bar history. That like that's the only thing he's really good at. Even bring up that he's terrible at physics, which is of course a reference to the fact that our previous Kamen Rider Sento Kiryu was a master physicist. Oh, that's better. Oh, I can feel my throat drying out. Oh, that's much better. Okay, sorry. Oh, that's better. And so he eventually tries to break it up, culminating in him getting dunked in a river, which again makes Tsukuyomi believe she didn't get the right person, which I actually really like. That was one of my favorite parts. But then, of course, they get interrupted once again by Gates, this time in his actual rider form, not in the time machine. And so the two once again race back to their time machine. And in doing so, get into once again no fight, but this time in the time stream. However, Gates manages to knock them out of the time stream into 2017, where they're back into the time period of Kamen Rider Build, and they actually end up bouncing off the skywall, which causes Sogo to get knocked out of the ship where he meets Build and Cross, fighting a smash. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to complain, like, why is that happening? Because this is the world where there was no skywall. I'm going to assume that, like, because of the fact that Build is an alternate timeline, the ship can technically go to alternate timelines. Because you'll have to remember that, like, all the other Heisei eras shows up until Decade were their own separate thing. So it's going to make sense that some of them feel like when you bring up other Kamen Riders, they're not going to recognize it because of the fact that Decade had to remerge them. So they're technically going back into a time when Decade hadn't merged everything. So it makes sense to me that when they're going back to the time of Kamen Rider Build, they're going to have to go back to a time when the universes weren't merged and how there has to be a skywall. Because otherwise, it doesn't make sense why Build would exist, because they need nebula gas to make anything work. And so we get some moments between Sogo and Sento and Ryuga as they talk in Cafe Nacida, obviously without anyone else there because they could only afford to get Build and Sento and Ryuga. Oh, that's so much better. Ugh. And so they talk, and they kind of bring up like how like what it means to be a Kamen Rider, which kind of has Sogo realize that maybe he should be a better king than he was. But then Tsukuyomi comes in with the Phase Phone X, which is a ride watch that can turn to a cell phone and a blaster. It's a reference to the ride watch, or the smartphone, the Phase Phone. That was the transformation trinket and weapon of Kamen Rider Phase, aside from the Phase edge sword and the Phase knuckle, which were all weapons that were attachments for Phase. And so she uses the blaster to stun them and knock them out, because she doesn't want to create too much time pollution from her time traveling. So she knocks Sogo out and takes him back home, where Sogo wakes up thinking that it's all a dream. And so he talks with his uncle, and his uncle talks about how, if he really does have a chance to be a king, or, if he does have a chance to make his dreams come true, he should take it, because time is always moving forward, and you may think you'll get that chance again, but you'll find out that time doesn't work that way, and that, you should always try to take chances when they come. This, of course, inspiring Sogo to decide to take up the ride watch and fight his Kamen Rider Zio. While all this is going on, and I'm sorry I'm kind of doubling back, but there's a lot of plot in this arc, or this episode, which is kind of probably one of the bigger problems of this episode. And I feel like it had the same problem with Decade, which I think is more just because of the fact that they have to set up the fact that this is going to be a season where we see all the riders, and you have to get all of the different things out that what the season is going to do. And in fact, I think that this show is going to be very formulaic. And I'll get to that after I finish my summary. So, while this is all going on, we cut back to 2017, where a young basketball player is playing basketball when all of a sudden a car almost collides into him, until a mysterious boy in a blue coat, who is a member of this force known as the Time Jackers. We don't really get what the Time Jackers are, and whether or not Waz is a member of it or not. All we know is this kid manages to stop the car using his weird time powers. And so Chuck makes a contract with Kid that says, hey, I'll save your life, but you have to become another rider. Which is a reference to these watches called another ride watches, which are different from the ride watches Zio uses, as they have a demonic picture of the rider that is on it. And of course, the kid does so because he doesn't want to die. He, of course, makes the car, instead of stopping the car or rewinding the car and getting the kid out of the way, he uses his powers to knock the car into another car. And in doing so, he takes the watch and puts it into his chest, turning him into a Kaijin rider. In this case, another Build, who is a demonic version of Build. And I love the Kaijin rider look. It meshes the familiar look of the rider with, monstrous designs. In this case, taking the rabbit and tank eye pieces and making them kind of look like demon eyes. The fact that instead of having no mouth or like a mouth guard, it has teeth. It even has a demonic version of the Build driver. And this part's kind of weird because we see a newspaper that implies that that another Build has been around for a year and causing mysterious disappearances. In this case, he fights a tennis player. Or he attacks a tennis player and then a karate guy, and he beats them up and then uses empty full bottles to seal them into blank full bottles, which he calls karate and tennis, not a best match. Which I think is supposed to imply that he's looking for the opposite of Build, where Build was looking for best matches, because he's a monster rider. But anyway, he basically uses those full balls. It's not implied how, but probably he absorbs them somehow. To create, so the A gives him fighting abilities with the karate, and he can make, I guess, energy projectiles with the tennis full bottle. In this case, in the shape of basketballs, because the kid was a basketball player. In fact, he doesn't have a name. The kid is just called Mysterious Basketball Player in the wiki. But basically, he's been attacking people, and at this point, Sogo finds out that there's this monster attacking people, and Tsukuyomi is trying to fight it. And I give props to Tsukuyomi. She's just fighting it with her little 5-phone X blaster. She's not doing much, but she's managing to at least keep it at bay. And so Sogo and attacks Sogo's friends, and Sogo finally remembers why exactly he wants to be a king. And he decides that he will use the Ride Watch, which eventually turns it into his Zio Ride Watch. And in doing so, the mysterious figure Waz gives him his rider, his belt, the Ziku driver, and in fact hands it to him on a on a velvet pillow like he is a king. And in doing so, we see him finally transform into Kamen Rider Bill, or Zio. And I admit, I really like his transformation, because I like that when he slots it in, this clock appears behind him, which of course, as he does his henshin pose. And I like the Zio driver in general, or the Ziku driver in general. I like that by pushing the top clock button, it causes the belt to go onto like a slant instead of being horizontal across his waist. Which is in many ways kind of a reference to O's, but it's not slanted right to left as how you so he could scan it right to left. Instead, it's actually slanted so it goes left at top, right at the bottom. Or no, actually, it does slant. It does slant because the Ride Watch, his Ride Watch is there, and the Armor Ride Watch slot is there, and so we get that, and then he spins the watch, which causes all these watch bands to appear that materialize the suit, and then the watch behind it explodes into the kanji for Rider, which appears onto his face, and then he goes into his henshin pose, which I actually think is kind of fun, because there's a watch adjustment dials on his head that he turns to adjust, as if he's adjusting for battle. And so and of course, it looks exactly like the statue, which makes Tsukuyomi freak out that she's caused the bad future to happen regardless. Although Sogo is adamant that he wants to become a good king, and so proceeds to fight another build. And I admit the fight's actually pretty well done. I like that that another build is using basketball attacks to fight, and of course he makes basketball projectiles, so of course me and pretty much every other fan of the series is making basketball references and Space Jam references. And he does an okay job. It's kind of implied that he doesn't have any fighting experience, so probably a lot of it's the influence of the Ziku driver and the Ziku Ride Watch, or the Zio Ride Watch, that allows him to fight as well as he's doing. Eventually, these weird kanji appear, and they turn into his sword gun combo weapon, the Zikan Girade, which I like the naming. It's actually it's kanji, I think, translates to edge of time or end of time, he's end of time sword, which I think is kind of clever because it's calling itself the Edge of Time. And it's a sword, so it's literally he's using an edge of time to fight. And so he begins fight, and so using the sword, he manages to have a much better time fighting this thing. Eventually, the thing another build jumps into the air to create a really powerful basketball projectile that he'll use to try to kill Zio. And so Zio takes his Ride Watch off of his belt and puts it onto the Zikan Grade's Ride Watch slot, which gives him finish time. Anytime he does a finisher, his belt or his weapon will say, "Finish time!" Saying, it's time for the finisher. And he performs the first finisher of the show, the Zio Giri Giri Slash, which basically just means Zio Blade Slash. And he easily defeats another build, which frees the basketball player, and I think the watch lands somewhere else. So we don't see him turn into build yet. I think that's next episode. But basically, he manages to save the day, and Waz, of course, is ecstatic because it means that his king is getting one step closer to being real, or something. It's not really made clear. But yeah, and so the episode ends with Gates seeing that, and Gates being like, "Yo, why did you take the Zeo watch? I almost wasn't going to kill you because you didn't, but like now you are. Why did you choose this path?" And Sogo does the stupidest thing he could do by saying, "Well, I want to be a king, and I was born to be a king," which is, of course, what Oma Zeo said after wiping out all of Gates' friends. So Gates freaks out and does his transformation into Kamen Rider Gates. I think this is actually the second time a secondary rider has premiered in the same episode as the primary rider. In this case, he premieres in the first episode, much like I think Ryuki or Kamen Rider Night did, because Kamen Rider Night appeared actually before Ryuki. Although he didn't. I think he henshin before Ryuki. This time, Gates didn't henshin before Z. I mean, he showed up in his outfit, but we never saw his henshin. And so we see his henshin, and I really like his henshin where he holds the belt like this, like with both hands, and spins it. Because he does like a bunch of wind up, like he's doing a Kamehameha wave kind of thing. And so he transforms, and I like his because his motif is more of a digital watch, whereas Zeo's is an analog watch. I'm sorry I'm walking around. I just kind of wanted to stand up. I actually hurt my leg at work, and I'm just now getting over it, and it feels good to walk around. And so he transforms into Gate, and I like because like it's a digital watch. Like there's all these like gears and stuff behind it that explode into the word Gates, which shows up in a butterfly shape. Apparently in reference to like the butterfly effect, like that time travel thing where like if you squash a butterfly, like it affects everything else that's going to happen. Sorry, I'm checking my computer while I'm talking. I've already made this really long. And so Gates transforms, and then he pulls out his Ghost Ride watch, which we're not sure how he got. Like I said, like everything else Gates does, we're not sure how he got all this stuff. Maybe we'll find out that he was actually created by the Time Jackers to stop Zeo, or maybe they had this stuff already, but it's not really made clear how they got all this. And so he pulls out the Ghost Ride watch, and we see the first the introduction to rider armors, in this case Kamen Rider Ghost, which I actually like how it shows up. Basically, it'll create like an energy image of like the trinket of that season, and it'll show the armor in it doing like a pose that the rider you would see the rider doing. In this case, the prayer pose that Ghost would always do before he would do like a finisher or when he would show up. And then he walks forward with the armor, like walking, like not like surrounding him, but not on him, as the transformation calls put out, and then it snaps onto his armor, and then the episode ends with him summoning the Ghost Parkas, particularly Newton, Masa. Was it Masamune or Muramasa? I forget which. It was Muramasa. Muramasa, Newton, Edison, and I forget what the other one was. But basically, the first 4 Ghost Parkers that we saw in a lot of the promotional material for Ghost, and he rushes at Zeo when the episode ends. So yeah, that was the episode. So what did I think about it? Okay, I liked a lot of the fight stuff. I liked how the episode clearly sets up how we're going to do things. Like we're gonna be. I think basically we're gonna have 2-parters. Basically, we'll get like where Zeo wants to be a king, and so Tsukuyomi, who was originally trying to just keep Sogo from being a rider, now realizes that there's no way she can stop that, so she's going to teach him to be a better Kamen Rider, and in that regard, he'll become a good king, because the commoners are good people, so they would obviously be good kings as well. I guess, I don't know. I don't know how that translates into being a king. Sorry. We'll see. Pardon me a second. Ugh. I don't know how people can, like, talk for this long without having something to drink. And so, basically, he'll go and he'll meet the new riders, but there'll be either some sort of misunderstanding, or the bad guys will create another one of the Kaijin riders. You know, he'll have to fight like the another riders, and you know, basically he'll fight them. He'll turn the other watches into ride watches, and you know, basically he'll be him collecting the power up trinkets, also learning to be a new king. We'll also probably see Gates be convinced not to kill him, and to see if Sogo truly can become a good king and become a good person, as well as just seeing the mysteries unfold about why Sogo is becoming a bad guy, or even if Omozio is him, as well as what is going on with the Timejackers and Waz. Having said that, I think this is a fine episode, but it's not nearly probably as good as the Build first episode, where we actually got a lot of character establishment. However, I think part of the reason why they don't establish the characters here is because we have to set up the plot of the season, just because of the time travel stuff and the fact that this is an anniversary season. We have to set up a major reason why Zio is so important, and why, like, it requires the power of all the other riders being put into one rider, as well as just the big mystery. Because this is the 20th anniversary of the Heisei era, as well as the fact that it is also the last Hesei Rider, so they have to make it show just how big of a crisis this is and what's going on. So they were more interested in setting up the plot than they were setting up the characters. And I think that the next episode we'll see the characters more fleshed out into what they're going to be for the rest of the season, particularly in the fact that Sogo now realizes that he needs to become a good king and not a bad king, and just how he'll learn to be a better person because of the Kamen Riders. Like, for instance, Tsukuyomi is much different than what we were given. Like, that, like, she's not trying, like, she's trying more to stop Sogo instead of actually make him a good king, which I think was intentional, because I think she was trying to go the easier route of trying to convince him not to become a bad guy, or just, not to, use the Zio powers at all. Just because that way there wouldn't be a need to kill people. And I know, one of the reviews I saw, like, they would complain about how, like, why wouldn't she just kill him anyways? Like, and I think it's mostly because, like, in my opinion, she doesn't want to cause a time distortion like that killing Zio would do, that could potentially, like, destroy the future permanently or mess up time too much. Like, I think even if they don't display it like that, I'm sure Tsukuyomi realizes that, like, altering the future that much to the point where Sogo dies would cause, like, a time event that would cause, like, the end of everything, or, like, it would cause people to not be born right. It could cause a worse future than the one they already are in. So it makes more sense to alter the future in a way that will change it, that has the best chance of changing it to good, as well as doing so in a way that will not cause a radically worse future. So, like, to me, it makes sense why Tsukuyomi is doing it, whereas Gates is like, no, it's just going to be easier to kill him, and we'll let time take it from there. And perhaps they realize that they have time travel immunity because they're time travelers, so if they do mess up, they can just do this again and again and again. It's not made clear. It's probably more the fact that Gates is no nonsense, where Tsukuyomi wants to change the future in a way that will have less damaging repercussions. And so yeah, I think the episode's fine. I think it does what it needs to, and that it sets up the many plots that are going to run concurrently through Zio, particularly Sogo trying to not become Demon King, Gates and Tsukuyomi's plans of trying to stop the Demon King from happening and how they clash with each other, as well as Gates probably learning that Sogo isn't really a bad person, and as well as the many mysteries going on about what Woz is all about, and as well the Time Jackers trying to create Kaijin Riders, and why exactly they're creating the Kaijin Riders. So, yeah, I think this episode is fine. I have some problems with the way the story is laid out, mostly the fact that we had to do the in media res stuff, and some of the plot elements being kind of confusing. But overall, I didn't think it was that bad. I think it's pretty okay. I know a lot of people probably say it's meh. I don't think it's meh. I don't think I was bored watching it. I was more slightly confused in things. And I was more just happy the episode had like an interesting setup for all the mysteries going on. And while I don't think it's as good as Built's first episode, it doesn't make me worry as much as I think some other people have worried about it. So in general, I think we're in for a good episode, a good season, or at least we should be in for an okay season. I don't think it'll be nearly as disaster as Decade, because there's clearly like a plot. So hopefully, you know, this ride will be a good ride as we journey through time to see the history of Kamen Riders and the Hesei Riders. I'm sorry that this was so long. Just talking about all this, you know, led into a much longer episode, but I really wanted to establish everything about led up to this moment and how this is a momentous occasion for Kamen Rider. And while I'm sad to see the Hesei series end, I am looking forward to what Kamen Rider has in store for the years to come. So, anyway, guys, that's my thoughts on the first episode of Kamen Rider Zio. In summary, I think it was an okay start. It was more trying to set up all the plot elements than it was about characters. And hopefully we will get more character stuff in the next episode. So, until then, guys, I'm Zangetsu 134. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will stay tuned. Until then, guys, take care.